Okay, let's be real for a second. You have absolutely typed some version of this question into Google before, right? It feels like it should have a simple answer, but the deeper you dig, the more confusing it gets. Well, today, we're going to lean into that confusion. We're going to investigate this whole mess, and we'll be using a really fascinating Reddit thread as our guide.
So this is it. This is the question that kicked it all off, posted in the subreddit Capitalism v Socialism. It looks so simple, but wow, the hundreds of comments that followed prove that pretty much nobody agrees on what these words even mean. So let's walk through their debate, see what they came up with, and maybe find a little bit of clarity along the way.
The person who posted the question really hit the nail on the head right from the get-go. They pointed out the central problem. Simple definitions just fall apart under pressure. Their example's perfect. If the right is all about less government, then why do many on the right want the government to step in and ban something like abortion? You see, it's a contradiction, and it shows how messy these labels are from the very start.
And that leads us straight into the first major idea that people in the thread tried to use to figure this out. You know, the classic debate over government intervention. Is the whole left-right thing really just about how big or how small the government should be?
I mean, this is the definition we all kind of learn in school, isn't it? The left wants more government programs, more regulation, more government. And the right wants less of all of that. Seems simple enough. But yeah, the Reddit thread immediately started poking holes in this.
And boom, that simple definition gets blown up almost instantly. A user named Mayonnaise Police makes a fantastic point. You've got ideologies on both sides that want no government at all. Think about it. There are anarcho-communists on the far left and anarcho-capitalists on the far right. Both groups want to get rid of the state entirely. So much for a simple more versus less government divide. So the idea that started to form from this part of the discussion was this. It's not really about whether you want government intervention. It turns out both sides are pretty okay with it. The real fight is about where the government should intervene. One side might want it in the economy, while the other wants it in social issues. It's not about the size of the government's toolbox, it's about which problems you use those tools on.
Okay, so if it's not about the size of government, what's next? Well, the thread's next big idea was to try and split things up. Maybe the real divide is between economics and social values. You know, is this a battle for your wallet, or is it a battle for your soul?
So on the economic front, the thread laid out this classic breakdown. The left is generally seen as leaning towards collectivism, public or communal ownership of things. Meanwhile, the right is all about individualism and the importance of private ownership. On the surface, that seems pretty clear-cut.
But wait a minute, this comment from user UpDog145 is just brilliant, because it shows how even this gets complicated. A person's entire philosophy can flip depending on the topic. You could have someone who wants a collectivist economy, but on a social level, they want total individual freedom. And on the flip side, you could have someone who wants pure economic individualism, but wants society to conform to a set of collective, traditional values. It's a total switcheroo.
All right, this is where the conversation in the thread started to get really, really interesting. After finding flaws in the first two models, a lot of people started to land on a completely different idea, that the real divide is a fundamental clash of values between equality and hierarchy.
The thinking here goes like this. The core mission of the left is to identify and take apart what it sees as unfair social hierarchies, whether those are based on class, race, gender, you name it. In contrast, the right tends to see existing hierarchies as natural, or even necessary, for a society that's stable and has order.
And people really ran with this idea. User BlurtBlurt00 puts it so plainly, saying this has basically been the model since the French Revolution, when the left literally wanted to dismantle the ultimate hierarchy, the monarchy, and spread power out to more people.
And this wasn't just a one-off comment either. Another user, SeveralScreen7704, said almost the exact same thing, framing it as a battle between equality and hierarchy. Of all the different definitions that were thrown around, this was the one that came closest to something like a consensus in the thread. It just seemed to fit the best. But just when it seemed like they were getting somewhere, a more radical and maybe more important idea started to pop up. What if the problem isn't our definitions of left and right? What if the real problem is the very idea of a left-right spectrum in the first place?
Just think about it for a second. We are trying to cram this incredibly complex universe of human beliefs, our ideas about the economy, society, personal freedom, foreign policy, everything, onto one single straight line. That's kind of crazy, right? It's like trying to describe an entire city by just giving the name of one street.
And that is exactly the point that user Fanted4Real makes. The biggest mistake is just assuming that politics is one-dimensional. The map that we're all using to navigate this stuff, it's just way too simple for the complicated world it's trying to describe.
So let's just quickly recap this whole journey. We started with the simple idea of government size, but we found out both sides want it, just for different things. Then we tried splitting it between economics and society, but we saw how people's views can be totally inconsistent across those categories. And even the most promising idea, equality versus hierarchy, is still really debated. Every single framework we looked at had a major flaw.
And this is where the thread lands on its most powerful conclusion, and it's summed up perfectly by user Jumpy Equivalent 918. What if, after all this debate, left and right have basically stopped being useful descriptions of an ideology? What if they're now just jerseys for different teams, just simple labels to show which tribe you belong to?
So where does all of this leave us? Well, after this whole investigation, we didn't find a simple answer. Instead, we're left with a much better question. If the old map is broken, if the words left and right actually confuse us more than they help us understand, then what words should we be using to make sense of our political world? Now that's something to think about.